We now step into some fun. Jonah, our annual deep dive in always a new way with Emily Simon and her amazing team. I turn it over to you, Emily.
Ahoy, everybody. So let me tell you how Jonah is going to go this way this year as we take our annual not 3-hour tour. What we're going to do as a first step is called popcorn or improv for about 10 to 12 minutes. And then we're going to do the Herman Melville piece. So they're separate, which will leave us 10 to 12 minutes for that, and then plenty of time for discussion after that. So the Herman Melville piece, which some of you may have read, has a different conception of Jonah than I think that most of us have. So we're going to start with our conceptions of Jonah. Now, joining me, and I think that they're just about to be spotlighted as well, are two fine improv actors. My sister Anne, coming all the way directly to you from San Francisco, and our local thespian, who can then join with me as a lesbian, just couldn't resist it, Steve, is going to be also one of our improv actors, and then both of us will all be in the skit, as well as me. As in terms of what's going to happen here is that all of you are going to get to put into the chat in as few words as possible how you conceive of Jonah's character and how you see him. And then either Anne or Steve or maybe me will act that out very briefly. The idea is that this moves so that anybody and everybody who wants to give us what they think Jonah is like, which is not what Herman Melville thinks Jonah is like, and we probably won't even go there if you put it in, is going to be portrayed. So to get us started, and as soon as you want to start putting stuff in the chat, folks, go for it, is some people might think that Jonah is a melancholy guy, sort of like Eeyore.
Oh dear, do I have to go to Nineveh? Do I have to save the people? Do I have to? I don't know.
How about a conflicted Jonah?
Ooh, Emily, you're frozen.
Okay, am I still frozen? Am I frozen?
Now you're unfrozen. Sorry about that.
Okay.
You're good, Emily. You're fine. Anne, you were freezing a bit, and so I'm wondering if there's a little connectivity on your end. But Emily, you stayed steady.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and thanks for that help. I don't know what to say. We could give it a try again.
We heard you, though. We did hear you.
Okay, good. Okay.
All right.
Okay, keep on going.
Good. So now we have a conflicted Jonah. I think perhaps, Steve, you could take a conflicted Jonah.
I don't know where should I go to Nineveh? I'll go to Tarshish. Should I stay or should I go? I don't know.
And then we have the rebellious Jonah. Once again, I think that might be Steve in the, oh, it's Steve, I can tell from his.
Well, I don't have to go. I mean, I can do what I want, and you know, I can get away with this. I'm gonna just not go.
How about if Jonah has just simply lost his way Annie, do you have, oh, I think that's Steve who might have a thought about Jonah being lost.
Oh my, I don't know where to go. I'm just confused, I think. I thought I could survive this, but can I really hide from God? I'm going to try.
How about stone Jonah on his way to Hashish? Annie, how would that be?
I don't know. I don't know where I should go. Should I go to Hashish? Oh, I hope there's going to be a lot of M&Ms there and things that I could eat.
And how about if Jonah is so desperate for an adventure that he's just full of hubris? Steve?
Well, yeah, it's really my choice, and I'm going to go where I choose, and God can't tell me what to do. I'm in charge.
How about if Jonah is just simply, as somebody just wrote, asleep? Wake up! And how about if Jonah is like a rebellious adolescent? Steve?
Oh, I don't have to do what God says. I will do what I choose to do, and I'm going to Tarshish. I'll get away from God and everybody.
How about if Jonah's incredulous? Can't believe it. Annie?
What? What do you want me to do? How can I do something like that? You want me to go to Tarshish?
Minute.
And if he's just simply rebellious, Annie?
If he's rebellious, I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to be like my father, some minor prophet. I want to go out in the world and be a major prophet.
Now, Emily had a couple as well. And one of mine was Jonah as a Pollyanna. So when God came to me, I had to look at the upside of all of this. And there was plenty. Firstly, this could go to the person who said Jonah wanted to have an adventure. I got to go on a very nice cruise, and I learned all about the intricacies of ancient Phoenician sailing vessels, because the commentaries tell us that it was the Phoenicians who would have been plying the seas. And then, oh, the whale. I had always wanted a degree in marine biology, and this gave me the opportunity to fully study whale intestines. And then there was that 3-day trek across Nineveh. And then after that, I learned how to build the very first sukkah. And of course, there was the botany lesson with the yikaron and the bug that ate it. Emily's other one, before we go back to others, is, so here's what you don't know, because I've never told anyone. This is from Jonah. I think I'm gay. And I'm so used to people not wanting to hear that, or certainly not wanting to hear my story, that I didn't think anyone would listen to me, let alone believe me in Nineveh. So I wasn't going to go. But then when I found myself in the belly of the whale and was spit onto dry land, somehow it all changed for me. And I felt comfortable in my own house, my body, and realized that God loved me for who I am. And it gave me the courage to speak out in Nineveh. Now, are there any others that are in the chat that I haven't seen yet, or that people want to put into the chat? Oh, we've got a sniveling one who I think may be able to be taken by one of our improvisers, and what Jonah would have been like if he was just a sniveling guy.
Yeah.
How about a nihilistic Jonah?
Well, I know this.
Who really cares? Who really cares about all of this anyway?
And how about if Jonah's just having a midlife crisis, Steve?
I've had those. Yeah, I'll admit it isn't the cruise I had planned for, but a trip right now seems kind of nice, and I'll get out of the smoke. I'll get out of my conscience. I'll meet new people. I'll see whales in a new environment.
And how about Jonah the Nebbish?
Yeah, I don't think I'm the right guy for the job here.
Now, before we go to Herman Melville, either improvers or the congregation or anybody else, are there any other Jonahs that you want, before we go to Herman Melville, to share at this time regarding what our conceptions of Jonah might have been? We just got comedian from somebody. Well, that's a laugh. And we just got a lazy from somebody. Does somebody want to take that?
Oh, I don't think I really want to work that hard. I mean, you're asking me to do so much. Just maybe I should just take a nap. I could go onto a boat and take a nap, and I don't think I want to do that.
And we just got an angry from Steve Portnoy as the tech. Annie, do you want to do angry, Jonah?
Yeah. Here's what I think about your stupid idea. I know that at the end of it all, you know what? You're just gonna blame me. I mean, you're gonna be so happy about everything else. The people of Nineveh will be saved. I'll probably be stuck in a whale, or I'm not even gonna have a sukkah to keep that sun off of me. I mean, I'm just like, no, I don't want to do this. This is just ridiculous.
Okay. Anybody else feel that they want to share what their conception of Jonah is before we learn and go to Herman Melville's?
Well, I kind of thought Jonah was stupid. He didn't, I'll just go to Tarshish. God won't find me there. I mean, I can get out of here.
Anybody else want to put something in the chat or hear from our improvisers? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. 3 bells, Herman Melville. In the late 1800s, when Melville wrote Moby Dick, the entire town of New Bedford, Massachusetts, was built upon whale oil. And when our hero, Ishmael, a name that some of you might be familiar with, is in New Bedford waiting to ship out onto the Pequod, he is there on a Sunday. And he, like the rest of the town, goes to Pastor Mapple's church. The church is built like a whaling ship. On the walls, Ishmael sees engraved plaques and thinks that they're the 10 Commandments. They aren't. They are engravings of the men and boys lost on whaling ships. The whole town is there, awaiting Father Mapple before he arrives in a driving, howling storm. Father Mapple is in his 60s, and he had had a career in whaling for many years before he became, according to him, the pilot of the living God. The pulpit is high up in the church, and it's only as big as a crow's nest. There's no room for nothing more than the Bible and Father Mapple, who has to climb up a rope ladder as if he's climbing up the mast and the rigging, hand over hand, to ascend to the pulpit and to deliver his sermon. Father Mapple refers to everyone in the congregation, whether they are or they aren't, including the women, as sailors or shipmates. And before he begins his sermon, he tells them to move toward the middle of the church, as if he was telling them to move towards the middle of the boat so as not to upset the balance. And he begins his sermon. In our version, Steve is always Jonah. I'm a sailor until I become the whale. And my sister Anne is the other sailor until she becomes the captain. Steve, start us off.
I scoped about the wharves of Joppa and sought a ship bound for Tarshish.
I saw him on the docks ere he left. He had a slouched eye, hat, and a guilty eye.
And I saw him prowling amongst the ships like a vile burglar hastening to cross the seas. Had there been a policeman in those days, I would have summoned one and told them to arrest him on suspicion alone, so that he wouldn't have even made it onto the ship.
How plainly he's a fugitive. No baggage, not a hat box, a valise, or a carpet bag. No friends accompany him to the wharf with their adieu.
At last, after a much dodging search, I found the Tarshish ship just as it was receiving the last items of her cargo. I stepped on board to see the captain in the cabin.
We all desisted from hoisting in the goods to mark the stranger's evil eye.
Uh-oh, the sailors are staring at me. I will try to look all ease and confidence. I will give them a slight but reassuring smile.
He tried to fool us, but our strong intuition to the man was that he was no innocent. I told my mates that I suspected that he robbed a widow.
And I ventured he was a bigamist.
Or maybe he's the adulterer that broke jail in old Gomorrah, or be like one of the missing murderers from Sodom.
So, will you? It offers 500 gold coins for the apprehension of a parricide.
And as he looked first at that paper and then at me, all of his sympathetic shipmates crowded round and prepared to lay their hands on me. I trembled and tried to summon all the boldness to my face.
Which only made him look so much more a coward. What did you do then that you're running away? Mark how he doesn't answer. That itself is strong suspicion.
Mates, it isn't him. Says he's supposed to have a beard. Hair tied back in a single braid and an eye patch on the left side. This man is clean shaven, has almost no hair, and regular bifocals. We have to let him pass.
And I descended into the cabin where the captain was hurriedly making out his papers for the customs.
Who's there? Who's there?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
And oh, how that harmless question mangled me. For an instant, I almost turned to flee again, but I rallied. I seek passage in this ship to Tarshish. How soon sail ye, sir?
As soon as I heard that hollow voice, I looked up from my papers and I stared intently at the man who was standing before me. We sail with the next coming tide.
No sooner, sir.
Soon enough for any honest man that goes a passenger.
I'll sail with ye. How much is the passage money? I'll pay now.
I don't doubt that thrice the usual sum is too steep for you.
Oh. Look here. I have all these coins. I'm travel weary and need to sleep. Can you point out my stateroom, sir?
Not so fast. The speed to which you assented to a fare that you knew to be thrice the usual amount shows me that you are indeed a fugitive. Well, I don't know what you are running from, but at least I know it's not forgery. Your money is good, so I will put you down for passage and help a flight that paves its rear with gold. All right, there's thy room, and you look like you could use some sleep. Go ahead, step inside of it, and make yourself comfortable.
This lock contains no key.
I hear you fumbling around in there, Jonah, but you must know that the doors of convict cells are never allowed to be locked within.
All dressed and dusty as I was, I still threw myself into the berth. The little stateroom ceiling almost rested on my forehead. The room was below the ship's water, line, and I gasped for air. I thought I heard something calling out to me, maybe a fish or a sea monster, beckoning me and taunting me.
Get used to this, Jonah, for I, the whale, will soon hold you in an even smaller space in the smallest of my bowels wards.
And in the room was a light, screwed at its axis against the side, a swinging lamp which slightly oscillated and felt as if a large, frightening being was staring at me, watching my every move. I lay in my berth with tormented eyes, rolling around the place, and found no refuge for my own restless glance. I felt as I would after a night of drunken revelry, but no alcohol had I imbibed. At last, amid my whirl of woe, a deep stupor stole over me, and my ponderous misery dragged me drowning down to sleep.
And I saw that the time of tide has come. the ship cast off her cables, and from the deserted wharf, the uncheered ship for Tarshish, all careening, glided to sea. That ship was the first of recorded smugglers, and the contraband was Jonah. But the sea rebelled and would not bear the wicked burden. And I came closer to the ship during that storm, cleaving the sea with my open mouth. Steve, we need Annie.
Captain.
Captain, my captain, captain, sound the alarm. A dreadful storm. The ship is like to break. All hands on deck to lighten her, boxes, bales, and jars overboard.
And even though it was right over my head, I slept my hideous sleep through the raging tumult. I saw no black sky and raging sea, felt not the reeling timbers, and neither heard nor heeded the far rush of the mighty whale.
I went below and saw that the castaway was fast asleep. Though the planks were thundering with trampling feet, the shrieking wind and the yelling men, I yelled in his dead ear, "What meanest thou, O sleeper? Arise!"
I staggered to my feet and, stumbling to the deck, grasped a shroud to look out upon the sea. But at that moment, I was sprung upon by a panther billow leaping over the bulwarks. Wave after wave leapt into the ship and roared fore and aft.
We were near to drowning. See how the rearing bowsprit points high upward, but soon beats downward again, pointing towards you and the tormented deep. The sailors and I have marked you. We grow more and more certain in our suspicions that you are the cause of this storm.
Terrors upon terrors ran shouting through my soul. I cringed, but said nothing.
Nothing to say, eh? Well, the sailors and I have decided that to fully test the truth, we will refer the whole matter to high heaven, and we will all cast lots to see for whose cause this great tempest is upon us.
And of course, the lot fell to me, as I knew it would, and they mobbed me with their questions.
What is thine occupation? Whence comest thou? Thy country? What people?
I am a Hebrew. I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who hath made the sea and the dry land.
What have you done?
I am fleeing from the eternal Almighty God.
Then what should we do to make the sea calm for us?
Pick me up and throw me overboard, for I know that it is on account of me that this mighty storm has come upon you.
Men, row hard to the shore, men. Let us try and deposit this fugitive on dry land. Let us perish on account of this life. Do not let us be guilty of shedding innocent blood. For you are the eternal one. And once he is on dry land, then you can do whatever you please.
But the indignant gale howled louder, and the waves pounded over the boat with even more vigor. And despite the sailors trying to save my life and rowing at their hardest, I knew that all was lost, for such was the darkness in my soul.
So, with one hand raised evokingly towards God, I told the others to lay hold of Jonah, and I, as if he were an anchor, reluctantly dropped him into sea.
And instantly, an oily calmness floated out from the east. As I carried down the gale with me, leaving smooth water behind. And I went down in the whirling heart of such a masterless commotion that
He scarce heeded the moment when he dropped seething into my yawning jaws awaiting him. And I shut all of my ivory teeth like so many white bolts upon his new prison. Okay, everybody, it's discussion time. In order to make this work, I think the easiest way will be for those of you who know how to use the hand raise function on your Zoom to please raise your hand so that I can hopefully see you and hear your comment. For those of you who don't know how to use it, Steve just posted in the chat the manner in which to raise hand. But I would much prefer that at this point, people raise their hands so that I can hear you and see you and talk to you, rather than just using the chat, which I will find to be distracting. So does anybody right now have a comment that they want to make regarding Melville and regarding his conception of Jonah? And let me start you off with a question to perhaps fully set the scene, which is why does Father Mapple have to deliver this sermon in a completely howling storm? What is trying to be communicated? Do I see any hands at all that are seeking to be raised at this point? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Is there anybody who wants to take that or make a comment about that? And if somebody can,
I will unmute you.
Yeah. If you do the hand raise function, Steve will unmute you. And if you just wave your arms around and either Steve or I see you, then we will do our best to get you unmuted. But because there's 58 people, it's really hard to scroll through and see. I'm not seeing anybody. So going once, going twice, 3 times, moving on to the next question. According to Father Mapple, what is Jonah's character? And do we share this conception? How does it resonate with us? Anybody want to take that or talk about that? Again, any hands or people want to wave something around and try to be noticed, and or just shout and see if Steve can find you enough to unmute you. So I'm going to answer 2 of the things that were asked until I hear if else is going to communicate. So the howling storm is the storm from which both Jonah is suffering and the people are suffering and we are suffering. And according to Father Mapple, Jonah's character is he's a fugitive, right? He's a really bad guy. He's a sinner and he is on the way to not doing what he is supposed to be doing. Thus, he's a fugitive. Thus, he's got the slouched hat. Thus, he's a guilty person. Now, when we were doing our conceptions of Jonah, none of these matched. None of these matched with what we thought Jonah was like. So what do we make of this? What do we make of Herman Melville's conception of Jonah that it is so different from ours? Anybody? Once again, I'm not seeing any hands, and it's really hard for me to know if anything's happening out there.
So far, there's nothing happening out there.
Okay, or maybe there is just simply nothing happening out there. Does anybody have any thoughts at all here about why Herman Melville would write this way, and what we as modern day Jews think about this in terms of, is this a conception of Jonah that we like? Is this a conception of Jonah that we think is one that has resonance for us in our world? Or is it something from long ago that doesn't have anything to do with us anymore? Annie.
Okay, so I think that in the times of Father Marple or in Herman Melville, that there was a very much of a good, or you are either good or you weren't. It was very black and white. People who were, if it was the Puritan times, or he's from New England. This is a time when that if you committed one type of a sin, you were then you're going to be wearing the scarlet A on your dress or whatever that was. So there was no gray area about whether or not maybe Jonah was just really confused, or he was having a bad day, or any of those sorts of things. It was that he was evil because he was running away from his responsibility.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Anybody else want to take the notion of this was an old time, essentially, conception of good and bad, and it wasn't with any kind of gray at all? Now, taking that forward, what do we think of the captain and the way in which Melville does the captain? And do we share that sort of notion? Well, what do we think of the captain? What is Melville communicating about the captain that makes it perhaps something? Say that again? Is somebody talking? And the way in which Melville.
We always are.
Stanley, can you get closer to the microphone? We can't hear you.
Wait, I can't hear who anybody. Who's talking?
Stan Schiffman, I think we can't hear you. We hear somebody talking in the background.
Somebody.
Huh?
Then wave.
Say that again? Is Stan Schiffman trying to talk? Yes. Stan, talk.
Well, I can't.
Can't see your hand.
I hear you, dear.
Wave.
I just, stop.
Okay. Stan is now muted again. Is Stan trying to talk? And if so, can we get rid of the background noise where Stan is?
Yeah. Okay. Stan's hand is very much up right now. It looks like he's trying to talk.
Okay.
Hold on. Sorry, we're having some, and I see it. There's someone else who's wanting to talk. I think Lisa Cooper also has her hands up. I see.
I'm going to let everybody just unmute themselves as they need to. So hang on just 1 second. That'll make it much easier.
Thank
All right.
you.
Now, if you want to say
All right.
something, you can unmute yourself. There's Lisa and then Stanley.
Okay. Lisa, go ahead, and then Stan.
Okay, so I was going to say that
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm,
I think that the captain is also made to be an all or nothing. The captain is shown much more sympathetically in the way that he tries to take him to shore first. That he knows that it's like a sympathetic rendering of the captain.
Right.
Surprisingly so, given what an unsympathetic rendering it is of Jonah.
All right. And
It
Thank
sort of
you, Lisa.
stands in contrast.
all right. So I think, Lisa, what you're saying, because again, there was some background noise from somewhere, so I'm just going to try and repeat it as best I can, is
Okay.
that, okay, and if I misstate it, please tell me. I think that what you're saying is that it's contrast.
Yes.
Is that he's presented in a more sympathetic light, and that he tries to save Jonah's life, which of course raises the question of, is he doing that because he too is guilty for having taken a fugitive on board, where he does that knowing that the reason for why, as Melville paints it, he did that because of the money?
Okay, well, I thought though that he says too, that it's really up to God to judge.
Yes.
Doesn't want him on his conscience. So that he'll take him to land, and then if God wants to do what he wants to do with him, it's not something he did.
Gotcha.
I think the
Gotcha.
thing is that he did take money for it, but I was thinking more, that he didn't want to be part of it.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Okay.
Stan, do you want to try again?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I see Jonah as an atheist. He really is not a believer. And through the activities which take place, he gets broken down. He becomes a believer. He becomes a follower. But up until then, his being a Hebrew is only a label. It has no meaning for him because he has not experienced what Hashem can do in this world.
And do you think that this experience helps him do that, Stan?
I don't know, because I don't know what happens after. I don't know if he just does enough to relieve the pain and the agony, or whether he truly goes on and becomes an acolyte. I don't know. We'll have to wait till next year to find out.
No, I think we're gonna have a tie up here in just a minute, but I think that either Miriam was just saying hello to me or she wants to say something.
Yeah, I see a real difference between our own reading of Jonah and Melville's, in the sense that, like Annie said, Melville's version is very black and white. I'm a New Englander, so it's not New England, but it's very black and white. Whereas we in forever, and even in Torah, are much more much more accepting of going against God's wishes, or at least arguing. And I see that as part of what's going on here, that Jonah indeed is change. It does not want to do something, but that's kind of like in our nature, our Jewish nature.
Yeah, our Jewish nature is to question it, and our Jewish nature is to say, why am I doing this? Whereas Father Mapple certainly believes that if you get the word of God, that you are supposed to go and do it.
Right.
And I see Rabbi Benioff standing there, so I'm going to sort of tie up a few loose ends with the minute that is left before we have to go to Ne'ilah and the gates close. So we're just about to dock this ship in just a minute. I want to follow up on what both Stan and Miriam said, because what happens after this in the sermon is about Father Mapple and his relationship to God. And in fact, what Father Mapple says after that is that he feels that as the pilot of the living God, that he is incapable of performing the actions that God is asking him to do. And as the storm rages and as he speaks more, he gets more and more incensed and more emotionally wrought up with his own inability to influence his parishioners, his congregation, the sailors around him, with a moral sense of the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. And of course, in terms of the concept of the book, all of this is foreshadowing for what is going to happen on the Pequod, right? Because Ahab is evil incarnate. So not only is Ahab going to take everybody down with him, in Jonah, it's just Jonah who dies. In Moby Dick, it's everybody who dies. So at the end of the sermon by Father Mapple and how it ends, and I'm just going to read this so that I can spare everybody all of the pages, but I urge you to just click on the link that we gave you and either listen to the whole sermon or read it. It's up to you. But here he is at the end. Okay. And he's down now. He's still up there in the crow's nest. Remember I talked about how he had to get up there? He's still up there and he's begging the congregation to have the opportunity to change places with him, to have somebody else be up there and have him be down below so that he's not responsible for people. And of course, nobody takes him up on it. So at the end, he says no more, but slowly waving a benediction, covered his face with his hands, and so remained kneeling, crying, till all the people had departed, and he was left alone in the place. So as we move into Ne'ilah, and as Rabbi Julie and the others take us all the way into the port, and the Yom Kippur voyage has been completed for the day that started yesterday. As those things happen, I invite all of us to think about what it means to be left alone in the place, and to think about how we can join with the community in an exploration together of where we have perhaps mixed the mark and how we can come together. Thanks, folks. It's 7 bells, and I'll see you next year.
Yasher koach. And thank you.